Thomas is a tank engine who lives at a big station on the island of Sodor.
You feel that? Did you hear it? Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we call nostalgia. And if you're like me, the classic Thomas and Friends series has plenty of it. Maybe you were like me and watched these original episodes on VHS tapes. Perhaps you played with Thomas toys when you were younger and seeing these episodes brings you back to that. Or maybe you grew up with Chuggington and you don't know shit. Either way, most people have heard of and at some point seen a classic Thomas and Friends episode, even if you didn't happen to grow up with them. Now, the first episode in the first season of Thomas and Friends is Thomas Gets Tricked, where Thomas acts quite cheekily to Gordon, and because of this, Gordon hatches a plan to get back at Thomas, and does this through leaving the station without Thomas being able to uncouple, meaning he's then pulled at speeds he's likely never gone before, and overall tiring him out and teaching him a lesson. If there's any classic Thomas and Friends episode that you've probably seen, it would be this one, and this is kind of what started it all. This story, as well as most of the classic stories, were a retelling of the RWS books, although most of the time these stories were retitled and in some cases shortened. For example, the episode Thomas Gets Tricked is actually the story of Thomas and Gordon, and if it weren't for this pilot episode, none of the other RWS stories would have been brought to the TV screens either. And though technically this is the first pilot for Thomas and Friends, season 1 of the model series at least, this would not be the first attempt at actually bringing those RWS stories to the TV screens. As most of the fandom already knows, there was an attempt to bring the sad story of Henry using models to TV by the BBC in 1953. However, it will be recorded quite poorly, so much so that a hand could be seen putting Henry back on the rails, and is oftentimes made fun of through the Thomas and Friends community. On October 9th, 1984, the Thomas Gets Tricked episode that we all know and love was released through ITV, and this time they were able to get it right, becoming basically an instant hit, and it's this Thomas and Friends that's the most widely known and appreciated. However, before this episode would air, and before the series as we all know it was set, there was another less known about attempt to bring the Reverend stories to life. Instead of featuring models like the previous two, Thomas the Tank Engine would be more musical and animated, originally planned by a man named Andrew Lloyd Webber. He would start work on the project in 1973, and a pilot episode would be produced but be cancelled by 1977. Though at the moment the only thing you can find are pictures of this original pilot, a lot more information has actually come out about it. For example, just in this image we can see what Thomas would have actually looked like, and through other images we can see Gordon, and who I assume to be Edward and Henry, as these are the only characters to ever be confirmed to be featured. The hilariously large face and nose of these engines is really made apparent in these illustrations. I would argue even looking Disney-like. And though these images may be interesting, that's really all we have to tell us about this original Thomas and Friends pilot. At least visually, as details and lyrics of this original musical have come out. As it stands in 1973, Andrew Lloyd Webber, who had read the Railway series as a child, approached publisher Kay and Ward with a proposal for a musical television series. At the time, Lloyd Webber was very much the rising talent, having released 2 biblical pop musicals, as well as 2 film scores. He would have a number of meetings with Wilbert Awdry and Stanley Pickard, who was Kay and Ward's managing director, and draw up draft contracts with specimen lyrics written by Peter Reeves. The lyrics are even kinda catchy, being "Come take a ride with the 8 famous engines, famous and faithful and driven by steam. Each one is run by a branch line controller, each part of his scheme, the Fat Controller's team." Fucking bars, bro! However, there would be apprehension from the publishers and the authors. The agreement being offered would give Lloyd Webber's company control of almost everything, being the characters, every one of the 26 books, and anything else that would not yet be published. However, his lawyers would argue that such control was necessary in order to secure the investment money that was coming in from America, which would be needed to pay for the animation and the filmmaking. The project looked decidedly uncertain, but in November 1974, Stanley Pickard advised Wilbert that he was maintaining personal contact with Andrew, as he still had a slight hope that there might be a way out. However, Wilbert would remain apprehensive, claiming that once the Americans got a hold of it, the whole series would be vulgarized and ruined. And yeah, they weren't wrong. However, eventually a contract would be signed almost a year later, with Wilbert being paid $500 in advance. Lloyd Webber was ordered a pilot episode from Granada TV, and he and animator Brian Cosgrove would work on the pilot. It would feature 2D cutouts of the engines, which would then move along a background in a style that was reminiscent of Ivor the Engine. The cutouts and backgrounds will be based upon the illustrations from the Railway series, albeit in a unique Cosgrove style. The pilot episode would be completed in early 1976, and Lloyd Webber would try very hard to bring the project to fruition. However, he would decide to cancel the plan because the American market didn't show much of an interest. In 1977, Lloyd Webber formed the Really Useful Group, a name inspired by the phrase Really Useful Engine, and would then go on to write Starlight Express, inspired by the Railway series in 1984. Don't laugh yet, I haven't told you that this dude is supposed to be a steam engine! These onion heads in funny costumes on roller skates are apparently steam engines and trains. Not my trains, but those could be yours, sure, if you can look at that and not shit your pants. However, this would show that he retained his affection for the Railway series in spite of the dropped pilot. It's unknown exactly what story the pilot episode would have been based off of. However, from the available images, it appears that the pilot would have been based off of either Thomas and Gordon, Thomas's train, or Thomas and the trucks. Again, the only characters that were confirmed to be in the pilot are Thomas, Edward, Henry, and Gordon. However, in the specimen lyrics, many other characters were mentioned and may have appeared in later episodes. These being James, Percy, Toby, Duck, and the Fat Controller. The only known locations are Vickerstown and Vickerstown Sheds. It's not exactly known what became of the original pilot and where it is today, or if any footage still exists of it. The only known image of the series shows Brian Cosgrove animating the pilot, which is who and what you've been looking at this entire time. While not a whole lot is known about this episode, I actually really enjoyed the designs of the locomotives here, even though Thomas kind of looks like a sad dog. I think at least personality-wise, they nailed Gordon and Henry, and you could not tell me in a million years that this is Edward, this is James. And while overall a long shot away from what we actually got, I can't help but wonder what Thomas and Friends would be like if this is what we got. Funny looking engines with exaggeratedly, large faces, with the same animation style as Ivor the Engine. It's also a musical, so yeah, that shit probably get canceled. But could you imagine? While it might not share much with this, it definitely nails that RWS aesthetic it's going for, and personally I think that'd be interesting to see. The way the classic episodes would tell the RWS stories was oftentimes very direct with not a whole lot of change. Again, they would oftentimes change the titles of the stories, but still maintain the original stories and what they told. Could you imagine if they turned every RWS story into a fucking musical? I don't know if I love or hate that idea. So with that being said, at the end of the day, I'm happy with what I got and what I got to grow up with. However, imagining if this were to be the Thomas and Friends that I grew up with, I wonder if it would still have the same appeal that it does today, and if the show really would have ended up lasting. Hopefully one day the original pilot is found and we're able to see for ourselves. Until then, we'll always have the classic Thomas that we know and love, and this picture of basically Mario from the Mario Brothers movie, illustrating our favorite characters in a very different and almost Disney-like way.
Go to hell, please.
Hopefully you guys found this to be interesting too, and thank you guys for watching. Wait a second, y'all. What the? That almost kind of looks like... No, it can't be. They couldn't have known. Could they have? Was this man trying to warn us? Nah, probably not actually.
Go to hell, please.